Welcome back to your weekly dose of Civic Type R. Let's get straight into it. So the Civic we got on the ramp today, clearly Championship White FK2, and we're going to be carrying out a few maintenance jobs on the car today. We've got gearbox oil change, engine oil change. The car's also having front and rear discs and pads, just genuine parts, so it's just sort of routine maintenance. But one of the parts that we are going to be fitting is a Dream throttle body hose. A lot of you guys have been asking us to do a how-to, step-by-step guide on what tools are going to be needed and what procedures are going to be best used to fit this hose to the FK2. It'll be very, very similar to the FK8 and the FL5, as the inlet path is the same around the throttle body area. So sit back, enjoy. So the car that we're working on today has got its standard airbox in place. Although a lot of the cars have already been modified, so they may have the likes of a Venturi or an in-gen intake, which you guys will probably be familiar with fitting already, as you've probably fitted it to the car. But for today's video, we're going to be removing the standard airbox so that we can get down to the throttle body hose. Our throttle body hose has been designed to work on the standard boost pipes. So standard sizing, the likes of the HKS blow-off valve kits, they will work with this as well, and anything standard on the FK, FL5, and obviously the FK2. If you're using perhaps on the FK2 the AirTech boost pipes, we know that they are larger diameter and they come with their own elbow to the throttle body, so you wouldn't need this on one of those cars. Likewise with the FK8, the PRL boost pipes, again they're slightly larger, so you're not going to need this. So some of the tools that we're going to be using for today, we'll start off with a 3/8 ratchet and long extension. You need a 17mm socket, it doesn't have to be a deep one, but that's what I'm using today. Also a 12mm and a 10mm for the 3/8. We're also then going to have another 10mm on a quarter drive with an extension, 7mm socket and a 5.5mm socket. And you're also going to use a flat blade screwdriver. Some optional tools that may help in some of the areas that we're going to be working is a trim tool for some of the clips that we're going to remove, and also some long nose pliers for getting on some of the back of the cable tie clips. So to start off on the job, I'm going to be removing the scuttle panel today. This is sort of optional for this job, as you don't really need to do it to get access to where we're working. But if you're ever doing one of the boost control solenoid upgrades or even the T-valve delete, it's going to be worthwhile removing that to give yourself more access down the back of the engine. So starting off, we're going to remove the wiper nut covers. Now you're just going to use a flat blade screwdriver and you sort of just work that around the edge until the cover comes off. Underneath there, you'll find a 17mm nut. We're going to use a deep 3/8 socket and a long ratchet just to crack that off nicely. First wiper arm is relatively easy to get off. You've got access to the 17mm nut, and this one here you can see it's quite nice and free already. But if you did find that as you were trying to remove the wiper arm, a good place or a good tip for this particularly is to push down or just give it a bit of a knock on the joint there, which will help just break the seal off of the splines of the wiper arm. The second wiper arm, you haven't got quite as much access to the nut. You could use a ring spanner, but as we're taking the scuttle off, we might as well pop the bonnet and get this trim off. So in removing the trim, you're going to take the rubber seal off the top edge, tug up on this area here, particularly down the side, sort of hooked around the bottom of the wing. So you need to press down on the side there, whilst also bringing the trim down at the same time. So good access to the nut now, so we'll just get this one cracked off and the wiper arm removed. So exact same procedure on the passenger side now. Pull the rubber trim off, tug up the front there, and then just tuck down the back and sort of slide down, little wiggle. The back bit there, this one you can see is quite rubbery, whereas this one's a little bit harder plastic, so it's a little bit tougher to get this one down, but just press down and slide it as it goes. So back with our flat blade screwdriver, we've got two button clips to undo both sides of the scuttle trim, as well as a couple of pop-in clips, one around the side there, another one in the centre, and another one should be over on the passenger side as well. We've also got the washer tube to release. We'll start off with the clips. So tuck your screwdriver just in the edge and just work it one way. If it doesn't go enough, then you pop it on the second side. That should release the centre and they'll pull straight out. So the top clips are a little bit trickier and you need to pay close attention to these. I've seen in the past where people have tried to lever across the back here and the leverage point would then lean onto the windscreen, and I have seen chipped screens just on the bottom there. It looks like this clip's been out previously, so it shouldn't be too much of a task to get it out. But we're going to come in from the bottom, flat blade screwdriver, and just work it. Yeah, that one came out easily there. If not, you potentially want to use a trim tool where you can get around both sides of the trim clip and then lift it in one go. So to remove the wiper hose, we're just going to remove this black clip around the outside. You can feel around the back there's a small groove, but you just widen it and you'll be able to pull the other hose out. I'd leave that clipped on as you wouldn't want to lose one of them. So at this point, the scuttle is loose and we can start removing it from the car. What you're going to want to do is pull over these side trims there and just lift the scuttle just above them. Do that both sides, and then it'll be a simple tug out of the scuttle itself. There. And then if you notice there, you've got a tab that locks underneath the metal tray. So pay particular attention to that when you're putting the scuttle back in, but it's somewhere where we would probably pull from. You're going to slide it off the bottom of the windscreen, and then it's ready to remove. So now we've got the plastic scuttle out of the way, we can now get the metal tray removed from the car. We're going to use a 10mm socket. You can use 3/8 or quarter drive, it doesn't really matter. They're just 10mm bolts, so we'll whip them out. There's 5 of them. You've got 2 black ones across the top, and then you should have 3 silver ones further back. So now we've got the scuttle out of the way, you can see good clear access to the throttle body hose that we're trying to get to, tucked right down the bottom there. So there'll be a few things that we're going to need to remove. We'll start off by getting the airbox out, then we're going to need to move around to the ECU. But as we're disconnecting the ECU, we're going to disconnect the battery as a safety first off. So using our 10mm socket again, we're just going to loosen off the earth terminal of the battery and tuck it just down the side. So we're going to have no voltage going into the vehicle. So starting off in removing the airbox, we've got 2 10mm to do here for the intake tube. Once that's out of the way, we've got another 10mm that's securing the airbox just down the side here, and then a second 10mm just down the back of the airbox. You'll need a longer extension to get hold of that one. Starting off though, we're going to get the mass sensor disconnected, and then you've got a little pinch clip, which looks like that one's already been off already, so it looks like it's missing half. But most of the time with that, you can press one side, lean the clip the other way, and it'll remove quite nicely. So we tuck that down out the way for now. We can remove our 10mm on the intake pipe. So if you have a look at that one here, just on the side there, you can see that one of the inserts from the rubber has come out on the top one, whereas the other one on the bottom is still secure. So just pay a close attention when you get to this point, as you wouldn't really want to drop one of them, as it probably end up into the wheel arch liner. So back with our 10mm and long extension, we're going to be able to get down the sides of the airbox. And then this one down there. So loosening off on the MAF pipe now, you can see that it's got a Phillips head inside the nut, but I prefer to use a 5.5mm socket as you get a good purchase on it, and 9 times out of 10 that Phillips will round out already. This clamp is designed to stay in place. You'll see there's a rubber tag on the front there, so you've got no risk of losing or dropping that at the moment. Once that's loose, we should just be able to give it a bit of a wiggle and pull off of the airbox. Now with the 2 10mm loose, the last thing holding the airbox in is a push-on rubber at the bottom of the airbox. So you get just inside the airbox, probably hold around the side there, give it a good wiggle, and you can pull it up. You can see that's the rubber there that was holding the airbox in. So now that we've got the airbox out of the way, we can start to see a little bit more of what we're going to need to remove. Next up is going to be the ECU. So we're just going to pull across on the tabs, lift off the top cover, and then you get good access to the connectors. The connectors, you just pull across on the clamp, and that will release from the ECU. You've also got a rubber grommet holding it into the casing. If you just pull that out, this one you can tuck across the side, and then this one here will pull across the front. So those off, back to our 10mm again. We've got a nut here, you've got a bolt down the side there, and another bolt there. You've also got a 10mm holding the connection block across the front of the ECU. You notice when this bolt comes out, it's got a stepped edge on it, and that's to help with the location of the connector on the front of the ECU. To fully release that, you'll also have just down the bottom, there's a tab. If you have a look, see where my hand is at the moment, and that tab we're going to push downwards, which will allow that to slide off the connector that it's located onto. We'll pull this out of the way and try and show you the other side of that one in a moment. But from there, we can start to release our 10mm. You'll also notice that this cable here, which is on the smaller end of the ECU connector, is attached both sides on the front and the back of the ECU. So at this point here, releasing the wiring from the ECU casing, you may want to try a couple of long nose pliers. I prefer to do this by feel because I've done quite a few of these now and I know exactly where I'm going. Most of the time with these clips though, you can press on one side, which will allow it to release, and then just work the other side and have the clip fully removed. Now that we've got the ECU out of the way, we can pull the wiring across, giving us more visibility of the throttle body hose that we're going to be removing. You can also disconnect the other sensor that you see just in front of the throttle body, tuck that wiring just out of the way. We're also going to now need to grab a 12mm socket, whether you're using your quarter drive or 3/8. You've got a bracket to remove along the side here, as well as the 10mm Jubilees. So the bit that we're going to be removing next is the support bracket across the intake tube. So we've got 3 12mm. And we'll undo all of them just to fully remove the bracket. So we're just about ready to get the old throttle body hose removed off the car. There's one last piece to remove. You could make a little shortcut around this and just bend it out of the way, pushing down, and it would probably give you enough room to remove the throttle body and the tube itself. But for today, and to give you a best idea of good practice, and what we would do is we're actually going to remove the 3 12mm holding the ECU bracket in place, so we can get a good pull on that and make sure that we get the new hose fitted correctly. So I'm going to step down to a quarter drive ratchet now, and that's just to be able to get into the spaces as it's a little bit tighter. We've got one 10mm one side, another 10mm the other side. So we get those off and we should be able to pull the pipe out. So it's pretty straightforward from here. We've got good access all around the inlet pipe now. We've got 2 10mm Jubilees either side, so we get them loosened off. But effectively at this point here, it's exactly the same on an FK2 as it is FK8 or FL5. The only difference is really is on the FK8 and the FL5 is you'll be removing the battery tray. Now that we've got the inlet pipe out of the way, it's just the last Jubilee holding the throttle body hose onto the throttle body itself. So a quick look over the two throttle body hoses. You see the Honda one is quite soft and squishy, whereas the Dream one is a lot stronger and reinforced. What you find is 99% of the time when we're looking for a boost leak on a K20 C1 engine car, this will be the first place we start. These are notorious for splitting around the back side of them. We'll put a picture up on screen so you know what to look out for, but we'll go ahead and put a bit of prevention in place and we'll get this one fitted to the car now. So just before we get the hose fitted, we're going to remove both Jubilees just to help aid the fitment, and then also spray in a bit of either silicone spray or maintenance spray just to help aid the fitting of the new hose. So the easiest way to get the hose fitted, once it's lubricated and ready to push on, get one side sort of semi on there, and then I tend to put two thumbs on the inside, and then you can sort of work side by side, pushing the hose a little bit further on. Now it's in place though, we can get the larger of the Jubilees in. Once the hose is fitted, we're actually going to need to open this up a little bit wider than how we had it initially when it came off. So if you're working with the Scuttle off, this is a good opportunity that you can make it a little bit easier. You just put a long extension on your course drive and you can get right onto the back of your 7mm Jubilee. If not, maybe a short 7mm socket will work quite nicely, as you could probably get in there with the ratchet. But as we've got the space, we might as well use it. So now that we've got the throttle body hose in place, we can start the refit in the opposite order of how we remove them. So we'll start off with the intake tube. Just remember to make sure that the Jubilee is opened up enough that it will slip over the intake tube, and probably lubricate up both ends so it slips in that little bit easier. So now that we've got the intake pipe in place, I've got both ends slipped on. The first Jubilee on the throttle body is tight, but both other Jubilees are loose. I'm now going to put in the bracket to hold the position before tightening up the Jubilees. So the bracket's loosely in place now, and it means that I can now tighten up both ends of the Jubilee. So back to our 12mm socket, and we're going to nip up the bracket for the intake tube now. So once we're at this point and we've got both Jubilees tight, the bracket done, we can plug the sensor back in and start focusing back on the ECU bracket. So we'll tuck the wiring back out of the way again, making room for the bracket to go in place. So if you are going to go to the extent of removing the ECU bracket, as I have done here, you'll notice that I've also left the very lower 12mm bolt in place, and that's because we've got an open hole this side, and it's just to aid a bit of fitment. So when we go back in, we can just slot up onto that hole and then drop one of the other 12mm bolts into place. So ECU bracket is back in place, and I can put the ECU back in now. And if you remember what I said when I stripped it down, that we got the clips all around the side of the ECU casing, so we're going to be looking to clip all the wiring back into its original place. So one of the easiest ways I've found of refitting the ECU would be starting off and getting it located on the stud there, and then putting your 10mm nut back into place. That way the ECU is not going to move around too much. You can then get your wiring clipped back into place and then move along to the other 10mm bolts around the front. So at this point here, we can locate the front connector and put him back onto his bracket, and then we'll be able to locate the cable tie clips back into their original housings. So before putting this second ECU connector back onto the ECU, we're going to put the rest of the bolts back into its casing. So start off with the side one, and then from there you can locate the lower one into place. So the ECU cover will now simply push back into place and locate on its original clips. So airbox can now be dropped back into place and located back onto the 10mm bolts that were securing it. Remember, we've got that rubber pin that you'll need to get located and then just push back down onto, and probably suggest putting the intake pipe back on at this point as well before fully tightening down the airbox. Back with our 5.5mm socket, we can tighten up the front of the airbox and reconnect the MAF sensor. So final steps is to put the intake path back onto the airbox, and it shouldn't really need much lubrication as these are quite a good fit. You've also got a locator there to make sure that slips into place. And then finally, your two 10mm bolts into the wing. Finally, we'll get the battery reconnected and we'll start working back on refitting of the scuttle panel. So at this point here, it's the same as we did when we removed. So you want to lift these tabs back over the top of the scuttle panel this time. Keep the scuttle pushed down, and again, feeling for these points here, they're going to then slip onto the metal bracket that's underneath, or metal tray. It's down there, these are over the top. We look like we're lined up nice to the windscreen. We should just be able to give it a nice little push back. And it all click into place. So we now start refitting some of the clips. So we've got the push clip there, we've got the wider push clips at the side here. Another one back in the centre. Another one here, and then not forgetting our wash bottle hose there. So putting these back together, where we removed the black clip or pushed it out of the way, we don't need to do that this time. Simply pushed in, clicks into place. So we're going to refit the wiper arms at this point. Slightly different to the way that we actually strip down, and that's more so just because the bonnet is up at the minute and we've got good access to the wiper arms before putting these trims back into place. What you'll find is most of the time on the windscreen there'll be marks from where the wipers were sitting. So sort of just line up with those, get your pin quite close to the wiper arm there, And then if you just push down on the centre, that will locate onto the spline where it needs to be, and then you can nip up the 17s. So in refitting of the side trims, what you notice, remember if I said that we're going to need to push down on these areas here. If you look in the side there, we've got a little hole which is going to locate with this part of the A-pillar trim. We'll pull the bonnet down and then we'll have a look at that. And that rounds us up for today's video. Hope you enjoyed watching, and if there's anything else that you'd like to see fitted to an FK2, FK8 or even FL5, let us know in the comments below and we'll be more than happy to try and accommodate. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, give the video a like, and we'll see you next week.